Hi, welcome to Fresh Air at 5, episode 183, Schools in Session. So here we go for 2024. Thanks for listening, thanks for subscribing, and share this with your friends. Without further ado, episode 183, Fresh Air at 5.
I'm Josh Swartz,
And I'm William Illingworth.
host of the High Tech Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now.
Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others.
Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter, coming to you every week from Abbotsford, which is about 45 minutes east of Vancouver, British Columbia, on the west coast of Canada. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to get some fresh air by walking about my neighborhood, which is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Stolo people, the Simath First Nation and Mathwee First Nation. I consume podcast content while I walk, then reflect on this content in an unedited video, which I post on my X, formerly known as Twitter, channel every day. This podcast is the collection of the audio taken from those daily selfie videos over the course of a week, Monday to Friday. So let's jump into my listening and learning this past week. Good morning, PLN. It is September 3, 2024. We're in September, and today is the day school starts. Back to school today. So, I don't know if I'm going to call this episode 183 of Fresh Air at 5. I'm going to call it Back to School or something like that. It'll be around that idea. But this is the first day of back to work. Yesterday was Labor Day, a day off, and I enjoyed that with my family. We had our friends over and sat into the evening and ate fish and chips and just eked out the last goodness of summer, reminiscing about the things, and it was so much fun. All right, this morning I listened to a New to Me podcast that came out. This episode that I'm listening to came out on August 20th, and it is with Morgan Michaels, who is an educator and a consultant, a podcaster from British Columbia here, and I was privileged to be able to run and cross paths with her through the Teachers on Fire podcast. My friend Tim Cavey, he runs that podcast, and had Morgan on to talk about her new book about belonging and about being part of a culture in your school, and it was so great to hear her talk with him a bit ago. All right, on episode 224, I believe that's what this episode is, of the Kindsight 101 podcast. Morgan has on Dr. Michelle Myers Morgan, it took me for a moment to figure out who was talking about what, because they both have Morgan in their name. And she had on guest Michelle, I believe it is. And no, it was Megan Myers Morgan. That's right. And she has a book out that talks about negotiation and negotiating your best life. Lessons from motherhood to the boardroom. And it was curious for me on this first day back to school to think about negotiating. What do I need to negotiate today? And how do I get what I want and deserve? Okay, I'm coming right back. 1 second. All right, one more thing for September 3, 2024. Continuing my thoughts on episode 224 of the Kindsight 101 podcast with Morgan Michaels. We heard from Meg Myers Morgan, who is a mom and professor and, instructor and educator, and talks about negotiation and how can we get what we need in our lives and how can we achieve that. She talked about making choices about things irrespective of what other people think, because that changes how we approach things. what could you do right now, she says, if you didn't have consequences for whatever you were doing? Those consequences are about what people think. It's about the feelings of perfectionism and about letting stuff like that go so that we can move through our lives and feel good about ourselves and be who we are and who we bring to the table. So, Meg, I really appreciated hearing your thoughts on this. There are moments as educators through the year that we're like, what am I doing this for? And you have to remember why you've chosen to be an educator, or, being a dad. And I understand how you feel about having to do all the things. And not that my wife doesn't do all the things, but from my side, it seems like some days I do all the things. My wife does a lot of things too. And we go to school, we go to work, and then we come home, and then we have to be parents. And who taught us how to do that? We have to figure it out. And we make choices, and we have to make those right after we make those choices. All right, there's a lot in here. Fantastic. I like what you talked about confidence and about negotiating. And it's about having clarity, having something, and then about being comfortable with the conflict that's going to happen and knowing what your bottom line is so that you can do that. I watched a show about a negotiator last night on Netflix. It's very curious, very great to watch. And it was bank robbery, but it's more than that. All right, thank you so much. We'll talk to you ladies. Have a fabulous day. Bye. Last thing for September 3, 2024. I just listened to Teach Happier with Suzanne Daly. And Suzanne, I'm going to say that I'm glad you're going to be back on the air regularly, because I really learn a lot from your thought process and how you present information, and it means something to me. All right, as we are finishing up here, your episode that came out on September 1st is a bonus episode. People can go and read about this on the Teach Better website under the blogs that you've written. And so you are telling us about an article that you wrote, and it is called Dress Rehearse for Success This School Year. And why do we have dress rehearsals? So we can work out all the stuff that could go wrong, so that we can make sure that we're being successful when it comes time for the show. And as I go to school, I sometimes mull over the things that could go wrong and what's going to happen. And we have to approach what we do with what could go right. What could go right? Because there's many things that will go right, and people won't look at us the way that we think they're going to look at us, but things are going to work out. So having a positive mindset is so very important. Doesn't mean we don't prepare, because when we don't prepare, the chances of things going wrong go up significantly. So being prepared is important, but also having a way of processing the dress rehearsal for disaster. As you mentioned, Brene Brown says that we have to dress rehearse, the disasters, what could go wrong. All right. I really appreciate these thoughts. I'm going to pass this actually along to my daughter, because she struggles with a bit of anxiety, and having some tools like these in our pockets so that we can write down what could go right. What could go right today, as opposed to what could go wrong, and seeing the outcomes of our work and things that we do. All right, have a fabulous day. And now I'm going to go home, make a cup of coffee, and settle in to back to school. Okay, have a fabulous day. Bye. Good morning, PLN. It's September 4, 2024. Fresh Air at 5 this morning. I took in episode 23 of season 2. It's the first episode of season 2 of Embrace the Messy podcast with Shannon Schenkel from Prince George. And she has on guest Hannah Beach, who has written a book reclaiming our students, why students are anxious and dysregulated and things like that. And she talks in her book and with Shannon on the podcast about play being the out-breath for emotion and entertainment being the in-breath. And we have a culture of students now that have not grown up with a lot of play. And I can attribute some things to some technologies and even a shift in our way of thinking as adults that, it takes energy and work for us to have our kids engage in play. Even for us as ourselves, as adults, to play takes a lot of energy. This summer, I was out kayaking with our buds, and, we got into play some days. Yeah, we were kayaking, and that's fun. But one day we built a log raft with some rope and some logs. And man, us guys, we played. Our wives were watching, and they were enjoying and digging into what we were doing. And it was so, so much fun. So as we're, going through our days, let's remember that play is so important. I'm only halfway through this episode as Shannon and Hannah are talking. So I'll have to finish the rest of it. But I'm getting the gist of, we as educators need to bring play back into our classrooms. Hannah talked about the traditional classroom, like from back when I was growing up, back in the 70s and 80s, and when play was such a thing that we did. I'd come home from school, I'd go outside and come home around dinner. I'd ride my bike all day long up and down our street with my buds and enjoy that a whole lot. But as we have gotten today into our internet culture, our cell phone culture, things like that, we need to get play back. Thanks. Talk to you soon. Bye. Hey, PLN, September 5, 2024. Good morning to you. I hope this finds you well. I'm out for fresh air at 5. It's 17 degrees Celsius, so nice and toasty. We are on our way to a warm weekend here in my town in British Columbia, near Vancouver, Canada, Abbotsford. So, yes, some things to do, outside work to do. This is my last weekend home until the end of the month because I've got some fishing opportunities before me. I'm so excited about that and getting out onto the road to go lake fishing and catch some rainbow trout. All right, so this morning, as I'm walking, I listened to a good episode of the House of Ed Tech. Now, I say good episode. All the episodes that Chris Nessie puts out on the House of Ed Tech are good. He gets you thinking. He gets you considering and looking at different ed tech. How do you use technology in your classroom? What things can you bring to your classroom? An ed tech thought, some recommendations of tools, etc. All those things. And I want to say, Chris, thank you so much for the work that you have done over the past 10 and 11 years of the House of Ed Tech. Chris talks about summer break and how summer break was upon him and he didn't feel like it. And you know what, Chris, we all get to that stage where we don't feel like it. Putting out content, being a content creator, being a podcaster, you have an audience that comes to expect to hear from you on different things and what your thing is on the schedule that you have set out. Now, the great thing about podcasting that I've learned is that I'm the owner of my own podcast, and Fresh Air at 5 here is me. It's what I do and my choices that I have made. Now, I've kind of made a commitment to a weekly episode and forcing myself to get out and walk. And that, at moments, if I get sick, ill, injured, things like that, slows it right down. But what Chris is saying in his episode and his heavy thought towards the end is that, if we lack audience, do we keep on doing it? And the answer is yes, for a while. Hang on, I got more to say. Hang on. One more thing for September 5, 2024. Continuing my thoughts on episode 247 of the House of Ed Tech. Chris was reflecting on his audience and getting feedback and renovating the House of Ed Tech. When we talk about renovations, there's things that gotta go, things that have to go, things that need to get put in. And Chris, I want to thank you for your bravery in sharing your thoughts about how you're doing with feelings about the House of Ed Tech and listeners and stuff like that. I'm an awesome supporter, and I help support financially just a little bit every episode so that it can carry on. And without the backing, the financial backing to do some of these things, we can't buy technology to do our podcast. Yes, we can do podcasts for free, and I've been demonstrating that for the past almost 4 years now that I can do this for free. All right, I'm sending some love to Chris Nessie today. And Chris, know that you're making a difference in some people's lives. Now, I don't get a whole lot of feedback on my podcast either, and that is sometimes discouraging. But I do have a committed following, and I know who the few handfuls of people are that do listen on a regular basis. And so know that you are still making a difference in people's lives. All right, Chris is going to release his episodes on an inspiration fed basis for himself. Not a bi-weekly basis like he has been doing, but when he feels inspired. And I hope, Chris, that your passion for podcasting as the Podfather will keep on going. You know, that you'll see and stay, ear to the pavement, so you can listen to what's coming and share that with us. You reflected on the harms of AI, episode 246, as you talked with Tom Mulaney about the potential hazards and what we need to keep our eyes open to in this world of AI as we're working with it. You gave us some ed tech recommendations about various tools, and there's a great list in here. So that's all I got, Chris. Hope you're doing well. Thinking about you. Appreciate being part of the Educational Podcast Network. Peace out. Bye. And the last thing for September 5, 2024. Hey, thanks for listening today. I appreciate you being here on Twitter on the daily. That's X on the daily. And following along. And if you don't listen to the whole podcast, I'd encourage you to jump over to Fresh Air at 5 on your favorite podcatcher and listen to the whole episode at the end of the week as I take all these daily videos and take the audio out, combine them together, and put them together in one episode so you can hear my whole week's worth of reflections in one spot. You don't have to go back searching through my Twitter feed. You're welcome to do that, but we'd get listenership up on the podcast if you would go directly to the podcast and do that. All right, that's tailoring right into the feelings of and my thoughts about Season 3, Episode 99 of Seeing the Lead, which is a collaborative effort between Chris Jones and Craig Shapiro as they have collabed on a new podcast format where they have a prompt, and each of them responds to that prompt and shares their thoughts and puts it together into one episode. So this is episode 1 that I'm listening to of Small Nuggets, Big Change with Craig Shapiro and Chris Jones as they respond to the idea of I suck, no I don't, and talking about the self-talk that we bring to ourselves as we go through different activities, and things in our lives. And we, get a compliment from someone and we go, no, I don't. I suck at that. I didn't do a good job today. And we diminish the compliment and the nice thing that someone said to us. And we, put it down and go, no, I don't. I suck. And then when I really do suck, actually, because I didn't do a good job, we go, yeah, see, I told you I suck. Well, that's not great. Chris Jones gives us a tip about putting some pockets in one pocket or some quarters in one pocket. And every time we do something well and successful, move one to the other pocket. And when we're done, go buy a cup of coffee with that money. All right, boys, I appreciate it. Craig Shapiro, Chris Jones. Here we go. Small Nuggets, Big Change. Episode 1. Hey PLN, happy Friday, September 6, 2024. We are 4 days into my school year. Things are cruising along pretty good. And I'm out cruising the street this morning and doing some learning. This morning I listened to episode 283 of the Easy Ed Tech podcast with Monica Burns. And thank you, Monica, for yet another fantastic episode of your podcast as you're bringing us content that is relevant to today. And if you're not subscribed to her podcast, go do so because it will be an asset in your learning space. This morning on this episode, I heard Monica talk with Vicki Eccles, who is an author and a consultant. She works with a wellness group and talks about, wellness in our spaces and teacher wellness, etc. She has a book that's coming out next month called AI for School Leaders, 62 ways that AI can support and enhance the work that school leaders do. It was great to hear her talk from a leadership perspective, some of the things that principals can use AI to automate and help with, not just, writing assembly speeches or, things like that, but to help with processing of information, not necessarily putting in, private student information into AI and having it work on that, but just ways of getting at, handing off some of the mundane tasks. I like the quote in this episode that Vicky mentions from another author, I'm not sure who said it, is to, what is it called? Automate the mundane and elevate the humane, so that, we can spend more time with people and not doing the tasks. Yes, so many things here, and I'm looking forward to seeing this book in the future, Vicky. Thank you so much. Thanks, Monica. And with that, I'm going to probably close out Fresh Air at 5, episode 183, here as I finish my walk this morning. Have a fabulous day, and we will see you all next week. Bye.
I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's like a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find some other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific episode podcast titles and episode numbers in the show notes, which are only a click or swipe away for your learning convenience. I've also started to put together a Spotify playlist of each of the episodes so that you can also take a listen to those specifically, and the link to that playlist is in the show notes. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. You can also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Brian Carr, BRYONCAR, or at Fresh Air at 5. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can be found on the Educational Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. I hope you have a fantastic day. Get some fresh air before the day is out and take care of yourself, because you are worth it.